when we prepared this text some months ago, we were very much influenced by the fact that God is interested in our health. The book titled Natural Healing, Biblical and Dietary Laws, a Natural and Biblical Perspective on Health and Living, Volume 1 and 2, we were taken by the facts that the Bible contains much teachings about the health, living patterns of mankind. Recently, in one of our sessions in California, we presented a dozen of the copies of this text, and instantly they were purchased by persons, and they were very much interested in the brief discussion I held that evening on God's pattern for good health. One point of emphasis in the text that I want to highlight just briefly here today is the emphasis upon God's dietary laws. We go to the 11th chapter of the book of Hebrews and, of the book of Leviticus, and we read a number of statements in Scripture, in verses of Scripture, that God gives directions, the clarities of statements upon the laws that He have embodied for us to go by when referencing various meats and even plants and other forms of life that should be edible by man. Are God's dietary laws for today's world? When we consider these ancient laws and generations past, and even the generations to whom it were written then, it has been thousands of years since Moses wrote and recorded these laws. These divine statutes then and judgments that God decreed on Mount Sinai. Many people today are largely unaware of these laws and the fact that God wrote them to all ages. Most of this is because of the widespread concept and belief that God's laws are no longer relevant to our times. This includes those laws concerning the dietary laws as they were given then and now recorded, along with those who believe the dietary laws are still valuable and is for this age. There are equally a widespread ignorance in understanding the laws. There is non-acceptance of these laws, particularly by non-Jewish people. The Jewish dietary laws, as we often refer to them, is the body of Jewish laws dealing with what foods we can and cannot eat as instructed by the Creator. The Talmud is the traditional Jewish writing accepting the laws and also teaching how those laws or how those accepted foods, clean foods under the law, are for consumption and how they must be prepared and eaten. The facts are that in the teaching of the laws, we find that God instructed certain animals or creatures to be eaten, and there were others that were unfit. And we saw that in the teachings of the Jewish writings, references were given to what they describe as kosher, a word which describes foods that meet the standards that God had laid down in teaching the correct and incorrect eating of certain foods. The word kosher can be used and often used to describe ritual objects that are made in accordance with Jewish law and are fit for ritual use. And we discussed this at length briefly in one section of the book to give explanation as to perhaps why at one point God explained so thoroughly to the Jewish mind of ancient days the why and the way foods were prepared. When we observe further, we see that food can be kosher without a rabbi or a priest ever becoming involved with it. The vegetables from the garden, undoubtedly, when God instructed and described it as being part of his health plan for humanity, was considered by Jews, generally speaking. And the point I'm making here now is the emphasis that God placed upon a dietary pattern. A dietary means, a way of instruction in diets for humankind, for mankind to follow. And I'm not making that the dietary laws were given to the Jews primarily to confine them to God's healthy plan, but it was a health plan for humanity. God's dietary laws is a plan for man and a guide for eating patterns worldwide. However, in our modern world of processed foods, it is difficult to know oftentimes what ingredients are in our food and how they are processed. So it is helpful to have knowledge of God concerning clean and unclean food. The inference of man and his processing with foods does not give us a certification that we are